Diane Abbott has apologised for plunging Labour into a new anti-Semitism row over the weekend, with uneducated comments claiming Jews do not experience racism. The former Shadow Home Secretary said Jews only suffered, quote, prejudice akin to redheads and the Irish, insisting racism was simply a matter of black and white. Abbott retreated after a furious backlash, saying in a statement, "I wish to wholly and unreservedly withdraw my remarks and disassociate myself from them. The errors arose in an initial draft being sent to The Guardian. I wish to apologise for any anguish caused." Despite that, Keir Starmer almost immediately removed the whip from Jeremy Corbyn's old ally. Watch.
What she wrote yesterday, I utterly condemn. And I said we would tear out anti-Semitism by its roots. I meant it, and that's why we acted so swiftly yesterday. In my view, what she said was to be condemned. It was anti-Semitic. It's absolutely right that we acted as swiftly as we did.
But come on, does any of this come as a surprise? With the nasty Labour Party's loathsome record? It was only 2 weeks ago that Starmer doubled down on vile campaign posters that claim Rishi Sunak didn't want to jail child sex offenders. Meanwhile, earlier this month, MP Rupa Hark got the whip back, even though she called the former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng superficially black. And last year, the Ford report, commissioned by Starmer himself, found anti-Semitism and racism was rife in the party under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. So, Benjamin Butterworth, how on earth can you defend Labour when I've just given you 3 examples that it's not just the nasty party, it's now the racist party?
I mean, I don't think Keir Starmer could have been much clearer. It takes pretty extraordinary guts to remove the previous leader from being able to be a Labour MP, to being able to be a candidate again.
He served under him. He wanted him to be Prime Minister, and he knew he was anti-Semitic, Benjamin. So throw that out the window, OK? Next.
No, he removed him from office, and the truth is that, of course...
He wanted him to be Prime Minister.
What most people...
If Starmer had his way, Corbyn, an anti-Semite, would currently be Prime Minister.
No, I think you're clutching at straws because he removed him from being able to...
But look, you
know, the idea that Keir Starmer hasn't been tough on anti-Semitism is an insult to Jewish people. Many of the Jewish groups have praised him for moving forward. And, of course, most people don't realise this, but if Starmer makes it into Downing Street, that will be the first Jewish family ever in Downing Street, because his wife and children are both practising Jews.
Rupa Hark has got the whip back after describing Kwasi Kwarteng as superficially black. Starmer today didn't say that Abbott would be banned from the party permanently. And then you've got folk like Robert Peston of ITV News, who loves bringing down any right-wing politician, saying, oh, we should just forgive Diane Abbott and move on. Is there a double standard at play here because Diane Abbott is black?
Well, first of all, I think Robert Peston was wrong to try and speak on behalf of all Jewish people as though they shouldn't be offended by the comments. But, you know, there was a Conservative councillor only a couple of weeks ago who said that you should be able to have black slaves. No, it's not whataboutery. It's another example of the fact that racism exists in different parties.
And you're trying to raise a random Tory councillor. No. I've never heard of this bloke. I don't know who you're talking about. But Carole Malone, we're talking about the
Well, you've heard of Suella Braverman, and she does some pretty racist things.
You know, her idiot allies say we should accept her apology because she herself has been a victim of racist abuse. That, because of that very reason, is why this cannot be swept under the carpet, because she knows what racist abuse does to people.
Yeah, but she doesn't believe if you're white you can suffer racism.
Well, she doesn't. You know, the Holocaust was the most deranged racist crime against humanity, and yet Diane Abbott tried to say that all that happened to the Jews was prejudice. You know, what does she think happened in the Holocaust? And you're right, she seems to think racism can only happen to black people. She doesn't appear. So there's this narrative developing, thanks to people like her, that all the whites are privileged and all the black people are oppressed. And on that basis, the Jews are white, and so they are not suffering racism. So it is outrageous. She is a bigot. She is what a bigot looks like. She has pulled the race card many times during her career, and yes, she's been attacked. But you know, do you remember what Whoopi Goldberg said?
Oh, yeah.
A couple of years ago, she said she was asked about the Holocaust, and she said this wasn't about race. It was just 2 groups of white.
And she was forgiven. She was forgiven. And actually, I think
it's what a lot of black people,
indeed, and I think that's
like
really,
her and think.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating point. I think, because what we're seeing, Belinda de Lucy, in my opinion, is the Americanization of our race grievance industry. And those folk believe it is impossible for white people to suffer racism. Diane Abbott is looking at the world through the prism of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, and she's wrong.
And let's just remember the whole BLM critical race theory movement. Keir Starmer knelt to the BLM movement.
What was wrong with that?
Because the BLM movement is a political movement that divides people based on the colour of their skin, and it's also
pathetic.
It is revenge racism.
It was pathetic. Don't you agree with Dominic Raab, who says you kneel for two people, your wife when you're proposing and the Queen? And I actually think that taking the knee, Starmer and Rayner pathetically taking the knee, that's going to come back and haunt
He's the king of identity politics, and I'm glad she wrote this article, because Diane has exposed this running thread within the left that belittles the Holocaust, belittles what happened to the Jews. You see Gary Lineker, David Lammy, they all have the same thing.
Benjamin, do you want to come back?
Well, what Diane Abbott did was completely wrong, and no one disputes that. But how quickly you went from criticising her racist comment to criticising Black Lives Matter and black people standing up to their own existence.
Let's go back to
the hypocrisy is palpable.
No, I'm criticising the Black Lives Matter organisation, which, if you investigated them like we all did, the mainstream media didn't, so you probably didn't. They want to overthrow capitalism. They want to dismantle the family. And by the way, they're spending all of your money. You mugs that fundraise, they're spending it all on mansions in Los Angeles. So well done.
The black British people that went on BLM marches and were spurred on by that movement were doing so because of the racism in this country. And while Diane Abbott was wrong in her comments, she has been an extraordinary parliamentarian that has raised the issue of anti-black racism.
So you're another one defending her. Final word, Carole.
She has no idea what racism is. She had the brass neck to compare.
I think she knows better than you.
Listen, she has the brass neck to compare Mickey taking over people who have ginger hair to actual racism. It's stupid.
That was a terrible comparison.